So the first half of the season is a wrap, and it's been a roller coaster, right? The Warriors come out of the gate like gangbusters, 12-3 start. We back, we believe, everyone's on their high horse, and then it all falls apart. And they continue to blow opportunity after opportunity. The rumors swirl, injuries, age, which direction. All in all, I don't know about you, but here we sit at the All-Star break, and I feel pretty good where we sit, considering how the first half of this year went. Now, I didn't do a take on the Dallas game yesterday because by the time I got it out after the patron breakdown, we'd have been on to the Houston game. So I was like, all right, let me just wait on that. And listen, man, all these teams have their own individual story that's going on within the season, right? And you head into Dallas, and I know on paper, everyone's like, oh, you got to get this one. No AD, no Gafford. They didn't have a center. I understand that. But if you were to look around the league at each team's story right now, if there was a team that was currently more desperate than the Warriors, it might be the Dallas Mavericks. When you consider the dark cloud of Luka hanging over their heads, the fan reaction, right? And so you come in there and you've all of a sudden, it actually kind of worked to their advantage with no bigs because it played our bigs off the floor, and then you had nowhere for Steph to attack. All of a sudden, you've got Klay and Kai surrounded by all these big, lanky, athletic defenders, and they played their butts off. You combine that with the refereeing, and it's a perfect storm for disaster and another disappointing loss, right? But let's not dwell on that, right? Let's focus on the positivity. I will say this. If that's what it took for Steve to finally bench Buddy and dial back his role with this team, then fine, so be it. Now, I know some of you are in the comments right now saying she should have realized this 2 months ago. I know, go look at my videos. I made a video about Buddy needs to sit probably a month ago. I don't know why it's gotten to this point where it took so long for Steve to realize that. I think, if you were to ask internally to the organization, it's like, well, they need that. The motion offense needs that other shooter. And so we've just got to ride him until he gets going again. And he just hasn't. He's shotting better. But it just like my analogy the other day, right? Like you can't cook, bro. Like you can be a part of things, right? But you're not cooking any of the main meals. Like you can just bring like something on the side and maybe we'll use that. And so we head into Houston in a game where that's what I think hurts so bad about the Dallas loss, because again, when you're looking at the schedule ahead of time into this week, you're like, all right, well, if we can get Dallas, then it's all right if we lose to Houston, who would seem like a tougher matchup on the back end of that. And it's funny how it plays out, right? So you roll into Houston. I'm expecting the vets not even to probably play. And I want to speak about that for a second, because it does make sense that they get this all-star break, which our players kind of don't, right? They're all bound to this weekend because it's in San Francisco, but they get an extended break. And so you're like, okay, then they can play on the back end of a back-to-back. I do think there is an element of Jimmy's presence, because our training staff has been, they're ultra conservative. And I don't want to give Kuminga a hard time, but I have had like grade 3 severe, all hoopers. You get to a certain age, you've had really bad ankle sprains. He's 22. For him to be out like 8 weeks is kind of insane. But the point is, I don't even think it's necessarily Kuminga. I think our training staff is ultra conservative when it comes to injuries. And so I was kind of surprised to see Steph, Draymond, and Jimmy playing in Houston last night. But I think it speaks to Jimmy's arrival. We talk about them finding new life, new hope, and all this. And I think that there also is an element of Steph and Draymond wanting to show Jimmy, like, nah, we believe now, we're dogs as well. Like, we'll come out, tough it out, and get this win. I'm not sure they play last night in Houston if Jimmy isn't around. That's just my thoughts on it, right? But again, Buddy finally out of the starting lineup after the disastrous night in Dallas. And you've got Moses Moody and Podziemski in there instead. And you're able to do that because Houston, who is missing Van Fleet, Jabari Smith, a number of guys, Tari Eason, right? But they're not, they've got Steven Adams, but they're not traditionally big. Let's start with Moses. Look, I've been very critical of him in year 4 now because I feel like I've had to have been. Would you guys tune in if I just was always positive about everybody all the time? It's okay. It's okay. Like, I've been disappointed. And it's taken longer for him to figure things out in the league. To be fair, He hasn't got the proper opportunity. And so that I say that to say it didn't mean that I wasn't still rooting for Moses. I just no longer had as much hope that he was going to figure it out this year. And what do you know? It looks like he's figuring it out, right? And it started when Draymond was out with the calf. All of a sudden, he found some minutes at the 4. I don't know what the 4 is in the Warriors system, right? But he was more or less matched up with bigger players, which didn't ask him to try to contain the quickness on the perimeter as much. And then offensively, in turn, it opened up his shot window, right? He had a little bigger of a window. And so it was like, okay, he's gaining some confidence and he's doing things. But last night, I just found myself smiling, watching Moses and just feeling proud. Like, dang, he's doing everything he's learning everything that I would have hoped for. And it's all of a sudden it clicked. I used the analogy. It's like a lanky boxer who all of a sudden learned how to fight behind his jab. He's no longer trying to like be twitchy with these guys and match them move for move. And defensively, you're seeing he's figured out like I can just kind of stay down. And if I have to leave my feet, I'll do it late. Right? Because when he's flat-footed, I don't know what his standing reach is, but it's not of a guard, right? And so he's staying down, contesting late, playing the passing lanes, getting deflections. Offensively, I've spoken about how to disguise the dip or quicken his release is with that foot replace, that hop on the catch right into the shot. So he started doing that. And then in the last week or so, I had been more critical about, critical, saying like when he does get downhill, look, you can't get to 2 feet every time. I know Jimmy Butler is a 2-foot expert in the paint as well, and I'm sure he's going to learn some tricks from Jimmy, but there is times where you got to get off 1 foot because not only can you get the ball up to the basket quicker, you can change angles better, right? And then it accentuates his length even more. Pause, right? And so he seems to just be doing all these little nuanced things that I have seen, and I'm not taking credit for it. I'm just happy that he's doing it, that I have seen, and I'm like, dang, I would coach him to do this. I think he should do this. And I'm just starting to see it, right? And so that's super exciting. He has another big night in the start last night. Hopefully the shoulder's good. Shoulders are super spooky, right? And then you move on to Pods, who Steve, after the game, said, all right, well, Pods is going to get that 2-guard spot for now, right? We all know it's for now with these guys. And yeah, I know the Pods haters were sick last night because he was a big part of that win. What do you have, like 18, 5, and 4 or something like that? But what I wanted to highlight was when they asked Pods about being reinserted into the starting lineup, he didn't say one word about offense, right? He understands the assignment. He goes, well, that job is I've got to take the other team's best guard. Now, is he going to put people on an island like Wiggins? Is it going to be Pod's island? Probably not, right? He's not going to put people in jail in ISO situations. But what he is going to do is make these opposing guards uncomfortable, make them spend more energy than they want, and just be an irritant, right? Put up resistance, something that we haven't had at the 2-guard spot when Buddy was in there. And then the shots coming along. You've seen that since he came back from the injury. And I think a big part of it is understanding where his shots are coming from. He had one that he hopped into a 3 last night off a post little flip pass. And you could tell he knew he was shooting it before he caught the ball. And that's all the difference in the world for a shooter and a young player. So you've got Pods and Moody rolling, and not to mention the Pods Jimmy dynamic. You're seeing him attack closeouts that Jimmy is creating because he gets to the restricted so often. Now, before we talk about Jimmy, let me tell you about Underdog, longtime sponsor of the channel. It's All-Star Weekend. If you're not already playing with us, you can use the code Alchemy, the link in the description, and you can get a 50% bonus on your first deposit up to $1,000. Again, use the code Alchemy. Now, we've got a new All-Star format, and so keep an eye out on the channel. I'll post my picks as they arrive, but the picks I have for you right now in this, remember these split team formats, is Steph higher than 7.5 points and Wemby higher than 7.5 points. My train of thought being, look, Steph, San Francisco, like, you know, he's going to get up some shots, right? And again, we'll see how these games play out, and there's going to be more picks. And then Wemby, I think Wemby's thirsty for the spotlight. And you heard him say, hey, this is a business trip. This All-Star game is a business trip. You imagine he's going to score quite a bit. And again, keep an eye out for if we get some dunk comp picks and stuff like that. But again, Underdog, use the link in the description. I'll be handing out my picks all weekend as well as the rest of the back end of the season when it really gets fun come playoff time. Back to Jimmy Butler, who I think it's pretty clear now. You know, you heard him say after the first game, I'm not nearly in good enough basketball shape. And everyone was like, oh, you looked pretty good in Chicago, right? And even in Milwaukee. And then I think you started to see it the last two games on this Texas two-step, because initially you're fresh, you haven't played, there's adrenaline. I think it's after playing a game or two where Jimmy really feels like you feel the aches and pains you're not used to playing yet. And so you saw that on the Texas two-step, and I had people saying, oh, he's passing up layups. That's why I think he's been, in part, not taking more shots than you thought he was, right? And he's been kind of overpassing. And another part is he's trying to, integrate within the offense and show that he can distribute and all that. But I think he's going to get more aggressive offensively as he gets comfortable and he gets his legs under him. And that's exciting because it's like, it looks good now, and clearly he's not in shape yet. You can see that. But I think the most important thing that's happened in these 4 games with Jimmy Butler is what's happened to Draymond. Because it was the Milwaukee game where I was like, oh, is he going to just go into this mode like when we had KD, where he just thinks he's just going to I use the term hot potato, right? He's just going to overpass the ball and not look for his. And so I was a little nervous about that, but I should understand who Draymond is. He's an elite competitor, and he's a lot of things, but he's not a dummy. So you knew he would figure it out, and it seemed like that after that Milwaukee game, he was like, all right, no, I get it. I've got to look for mine, right? And you saw it in Dallas, and then in Houston last night, the nuts on this guy to take that 3. It was at 6 points. It was still 3 possessions on the clock. There was 8 on the clock. And you get it if there's nights where Draymond's feeling it from 3-point range. He's hit 2, 3, 4 of them, and he's going to take it. He hadn't made a 3. He hadn't been taking threes lately. For him to hit that dagger was fun. But it wasn't just that. He's attacking downhill, and he's attacking with the intention to get to the line. And so I think big picture, I think that's the most important thing when we talk about this new look is if we can get aggressive Draymond offensively, I like our chances a lot more with the concern of spacing and stuff. If he's going to punish teams by getting downhill and looking to score, it's going to open up a lot of things. And so, like I led the video, I feel optimistic. I'm excited. Yeah, it was disappointing in Dallas, but they made up for it in Houston. And, you got Jonathan Kuminga coming back after the All-Star break, what that's going to look like. Clearly, they're charged back up. And Jimmy seems to be helping the young guys who are kind of finding their second wind, finding their legs, sophomore slump type of stuff for Pods, maybe just at the right time. Now, Houston, talk a little bit about this because, I get it. We beat a bad Chicago team, a depleted Bucks team, right? And then Houston last night, to me, what they looked like was a young team that had their focus on the All-Star break, right? And that's the funny thing about Udoka. If you turn on these Rockets, Udoka will bench anybody. Right? Because the players that are young enough outside of Uncle Jeff, where they don't have a status where they can just where it's unthinkable to bench any of them. Right? And you saw him bench, basically. Jalen Green gets benched every time we play him. Every other game I turn on, I'm like, oh, Jalen Green's on the bench in crunch time. So that's a thing. And you saw him go to that second unit and they climbed back into it. And I respect him for that. He was probably even willing to lose the game to prove a point at the end there. They had the kid, Nate Williams, in there, undrafted, right? And Lendell was on the glass. But I think Ime's like, I don't care if we lose. I'm not putting y'all back in. Y'all weren't playing hard enough. And so that maybe benefited us there a little bit towards the end of the game. I will ask you this about this Houston Rockets team, because they're, the rumored KD destination possibly, and they're going to see what they have this year in the playoffs and then go from there. Are we sure Alpi is not going to get played off the floor in a playoff series? Are we not sure about that? I could see that happening. I know he's their offensive hub and all that, but I'm curious to see what Şengün looks like in a playoff series and how we may have to recalibrate our opinion on the first time All-Star after that goes down. And that said, hopefully we run into them in this playoffs and get out of the play-in, because what has it been, 16, 17 in a row in Houston? That's crazy. That's crazy. Anyway, y'all enjoy All-Star Weekend festivities.